Hey everybody, welcome back to Bonsai Echo. I'm Jared. I'm going to be working on this Canadian hemlock today. It's a weeping version of a hemlock. It grows in a little bit colder areas, so sometimes they call it eastern hemlock. This one was actually a nursery find. I have two of these very similar trees. I had been in a nursery for quite a long time, and I brought these home late fall of last year. So it's basically a spreading mass. It's grown super slow in the nursery, as these trees do tend to do. I think looking at it, I'm basically going to focus on some cleanup initially and probably finding a suitable pot to put it in. And then from that point, I'll be looking and see if I need to adapt the style at all. So I'll make it kind of nice while it's growing out and I figure out what to do with it. So I'm going to get going with a little cleanup. Treating some of these deadwood pieces underneath, maybe opening up some light into this, shortening probably some of the length of some of these branches. So here I go, as Nigel would say. Using a number of different tools for this, some dirty, some not so dirty. Dirty ones I use either for gin or for roots. Here's an example. I have in this hand my dirty concave cutters. I use these for working on roots and gin. Or deadwood, and this is the shiny piece. I can tell the difference between them. Shiny is for my clean stuff up here on the top growth that I don't want to spread any of the root-borne dirt and different stuff in that. So I'll be using my dirty concave cutters for ripping at some of these deadwood pieces underneath. It's not really worth showing what they are under here. They're tiny little stubs. So okay, good enough for that. I know you couldn't see any under there, but maybe later if we have some light into there, you can see it a little better. Alright, time to start spinning and seeing where I'm going to be making some bigger chops. Okay, very early on, some of these longer branchlets like this that don't have a whole lot going on and dangle straight down are going to come off. I could definitely leave those on if I wanted those to come down considerably more, but I actually don't. So off they go. And then some of the top parts that are reaching out a little bit and covering over some of these lower sections, I am taking off because I want to get a little more light down lower on this. I'll give it a little bit more of a rounded profile on some parts. Foliage on this tree has kind of a weird color. If you notice it, it's got some kind of tan sort of look on the green. Hemlocks are known for, you know, a nice deep green most of the time. Some hemlocks even have a little bit more silvery on the underside. So like on this one you can see there's that color on the top side, and if you turn the branchlet over it's more of a silver sort of color. So this one has like an algae basically that has grown over the all of the foliage from where they keep it in the nursery, or where they did keep it in the nursery. Didn't have really great air movement, and all of their trees in that place have this sort of weird sort of color on it, and I've gotten trees from there quite a bit. That color does fade away, so if you do happen to see that on something that you've picked up from another nursery, chances are that will also that algae sort of look will fade away on its own. As the new buds open up, which I can see some new buds on here, when those open up for the year, it'll be a nice bright green. As this old foliage falls off, the green will continue to get brighter because I don't have this algae problem where I keep my trees here at home. I've almost made a full turn on this tree, and there's only really a couple of spots here that are kind of droopy. Here's one of them, here's another one. I know I don't like this one so much. And this one, I kind of do like some of this dropping down, but it's such a straight slope down. I don't intend to wire this to bring in some curves and everything and make, you know, nice little foliage pads like this. I will be doing this from trimming, and I'm going to start by trimming it pretty high. So what I did is I trimmed those to the first shoot that grows off to the side, and new growth that comes off of that will go in whichever direction it goes, and I'll just guide it through some gentle pruning. Some of these like grow back inwards towards the trunk, and I don't really want that either. So easy fixes. I turned this tree all the way around one direction. Now I'm going to turn it the other direction, and as I go, I'll be pulling out some of the dead pieces underneath, looking for any debris that's fallen on it, which I am seeing some. And I'll also be looking at branches from another angle than I did before. As per my usual, no front on this tree. Especially at this stage, even if you are someone who enjoyed having a preferred viewing angle of a tree, your very first styling does not have to include deciding on the tree's future to have one viewing angle. If it's going into a training pot, very especially, I wouldn't bother trying to decide a front at that point. Once you have an idea of what you like out of the tree a little bit more, that's when you can make decisions on what areas to open up to view into the tree, what areas to fill in, things like that. And for an evergreen, those big branches that you had saved until you made your decision can become some really interesting gens. Deadwood, as I prefer to call it. So even if you've worked on a branch, put in some twists and turns in it, that makes the deadwood even that much more interesting. So it's never wasted time to wait to make the cut. Now I say that on evergreens because evergreens are a little bit slower as far as making new branches. So I do have a lot of deciduous trees in my collection, and you can cut those down and they'll make all new branches. An evergreen like this doesn't have that response. So I definitely do recommend a little bit more caution with any sort of evergreen trees. I'm going to get you a better angle of this underneath the trunk that I was just looking at. Alright, here's the underneath of the trunk and the branches. I'll give you a little turn as it goes around. Let's see, you can kind of see underneath that it's got some interesting twists and turns that were in there as it grew naturally over many years at the nursery. This is, not the twists and turns that it could have happened if this was a wild grown tree, but plenty of it in there. And I can actually do a little bit more chopping back on this to accentuate a lot of those moves inside of there. This branch in particular, if you look at it as relatively long, straight, thin sort of branch compared to this one, which looks more like a trunk. So in order to make this have some more interesting main direction in life, I'm going to go ahead and trim one of these back. And it's pretty long, so I'm going to bring it back pretty far. Gone. A lot of deadwood, or a lot of dead stems on the interior of this branch. So I just trimmed back quite a bit this one live branch that I'm working on here with some pliers. And because it was alive compared to the other ones that had been dead for a while, the bark comes off a little bit differently. In some ways it can be more work, some ways less work. This particular one, it's a little more work than the dead ones, which just had been dead long enough that the bark just kind of flaked away. This one is just coming up on its spring growth, so the sap is starting to get pretty active in here. And it's actually okay if you're not able to completely take off all of the bark when you're making new deadwood features. If you intend to keep a deadwood feature for a long time, you've got a lot of time to work on refining it, getting it to look like an actual weather event or life event that has created that deadwood piece. So a newer one like this, the tree is not that old looking just yet, and a newer deadwood piece is very much in fitting with a younger tree image. So as this tree continues on its journey of refinement, getting much more defined areas of growth versus deadwood pieces, the deadwood can refine right along with that. So I won't be treating this with any sort of wood preservative or anything right at this moment. All I'm basically doing is getting a lot of the live off of it, so the bark. Boom, made a little deadwood piece right here. Kind of hidden in there, you won't even see it for quite a while. I have shortened this branch a little bit, and for those of you that like this sort of domed image, we now have that with this tree. Also, we're looking at it from underneath, so that's a little bit hard to see from where you are. But that dome will allow light to come around a lot of the areas of the tree that may not have gotten light before. Alright, so this tree being a weeping type tree, I do want to have some weeping portions on it still. But I'm looking at it, and if I were to choose an angle for the tree right now, I may tilt it a little bit more like this. This is actually a really horizontal sort of reach for that branch right now. But you know what? I don't think I'm ready to do that sort of tilt to this tree yet. But I do want to shorten another couple of these branches a little bit. Alright, that is entirely flat topped. I'm going to zoom you back out and you can see how flat topped this tree is. I was just talking about how I didn't want to change the angle of it, but I'll show you in a second what that would mean if I continue on that path. So if I don't change the angle of this tree very much, top is pretty dang flat, and it will remain flat until I get some higher growing sections on it, which I have some options on how to do that by raising up some areas. I can take some of these thin portions up here, raise them up a little bit more. There's a nice piece right here that I can take and raise up considerably if I choose to. You may not even be able to see it from where you are. So yeah, that would take a bit of work, but definitely something I can do. So yeah, for now I'm going to continue to take this side down just a little bit more. This will be good because you'll start to be able to see the this interesting trunk from the inside. And the trunk does have some bark flaking off starting. A little bit of flakes like this starting to show up on it. It's even got some mushrooms in here because there's a little deadwood portion up here on the top. Well, that's the flat top look of it. I actually didn't take off much on the very top part here. Looking at it from the side you're looking at it right now, you can see that's basically where the slant goes to. This would be the highest point. I would like to have that raised up just a little bit more because I'm not a huge fan of this sort of look that it's at right now. A couple of choices there. I can tilt it down. I'm not really happy with that at all. I can tilt it up. That does make me like it a little bit more. So chances are we'll wind up tilting this quite a bit when I put it into a container. Depends on the container I have for it also, which I may or may not have something here for it. This is one by Anthony Jenkins that could go pretty well with it. It's just a round container in a brown that would look pretty good with it. It's got a little bit of super dark obsidian colored black portions. That could be interesting. I have a super awesome oval, which I pretty much hardly ever use, but it's a really neat pot, which could be interesting for this one too. Pretty much what I'm going to have to do on this one is wait a little bit longer until I can decide on if there is a particular container option that has enough room for these roots without having to trim a ton of roots off of this. So a deep pot, something like a Cascade, semi-Cascade, super chunky big pot would work. That round pot by Tony I showed could be okay. It's something where I'd have to mound up the top of the roots a little bit to fit in there. This is actually chock full of roots, this pot is, because it's been in here for a long time. So I'm going to have to really be considerate of how I transition it. Well, that's a tree. I'll get you in for another little last look on here, and you'll be able to see the nice little bit of bark and a little bit of the twists and turns inside. So there you go. That's inside of the underneath portion of this hemlock. See, the bark is getting a little bit flaky, which takes a long time in a nursery pot. A little bit of the deadwood I worked on there. Super simple shape. Not really bright at this moment because I didn't do any lime sulfur on it. And underneath there is a little bit more of the deadwood that I worked on. Again, not bright because I didn't use any lime sulfur on it. But all of that is nice enough to highlight at some point. Probably will wind up shortening one of the sides a little more. From this view, it would be the far left side. We'll probably get shortened a little bit more. Well, thanks for being here with me today on Bonsai Echo. Again, I'm Jared. This is a Canadian Hemlock, number 1 of the 2 that I have of these from nursery stock. I'll do the other one at some point. It won't be too much different than this, but you'll be able to see what you can get out of nursery stock compared to having to go and collect a tree. The trick is find the nursery. See you next time.